that we have this descending trend line. We have 1 touch, 2 touch, and of course we've now broken through. The important part here is we haven't broken the structure. What I mean by this is we haven't broken the previous lower high. So therefore, are we just sort of retracing off the daily 50 MA, and we're going to retrace and reverse down and break below it? We just need that correction, and then of course we're going to have the bears come back into the market. So it'll be interesting to see if we can then continue this bearish potential, or we're going to move to the upside following the fake out. So now let's jump onto the 4 hour. On the 4 hour, we have this obviously this trend line that we were just talking about, and we can see that obviously using our sort of reversal breakout strategy. If you're not sure what that is, we teach it at ROF, so by all means get in touch or join a membership. I can help you do that. But so obviously that is the RBO strategy, so I won't go too much into it, but we obviously have this fib, we broke up, we then made this new high, and then our 61.8 lines up with our daily 50 EMA, 4 hour 50 EMA, so potentially looking at long-term potential going to the upside, which obviously goes with some of the pairs I'm going to go through, because we want stronger dollar, which then sees pairs like GBP USD fall to the downside. Next we have gold. So gold, obviously I said last week, we've got this monthly spinning top, and of course this signals in going to be a reversal. So we have now tested the highs of this week, and I'm not really too worried by this, because I think we're now going to see the bearish potential come in, and I'll explain why. So on the weekly, we've got this sort of higher here, and now we've equaled that higher, but we failed to manage to keep this momentum above. Normally we'd expect like a minus 27% and then this, but we haven't. We've literally just managed to equal the previous high, and we've now formed this greystone doji. Obviously a greystone doji being the price is closed where it opened, but with a huge wick to the upside. But overall we just haven't moved anywhere in that week. Of course on the intraday time frames we have, but over on the weekly we stayed where we started last week. So now looking at this, I think we're probably going to see a move to the downside. Potentially a big week, we could maybe have a big evening star formation, but I don't think it'll be quite as big as the bullish engulfing. However, it's gold. Things can happen very easily, and a lot can happen in a week. So potentially we could see this downside come, and of course then we may even come down to the week 50 and then retrace and then come back up to the upside. On daily, simple case of this trend line here, so we've just got this sort of very sort of short-term trend line, but it's a daily trend line, so it holds quite a lot of value. And of course this with this, you can see just simple case of 1 touch, 2 touch, sort of 3rd touch here, and then we've stalled at this high, and now we've broken through it with a very bearish candlestick. So potentially come down and then make this new low, then retrace into 1 off fibs, and then we can look for the start of the downtrend. However, this could just be a higher low being formed, and unless we break this previous higher low here, of course, then we're not going to have a break in structure, and therefore we wouldn't be looking at this. But obviously now breaking this trend, if we do break this trend, our 90% rule says that we will 90% chance coming down to the 1455 level, which of course is a massive level for gold. So I don't quite see that happening sort of that long term, but we could have a massive fall no matter what. So on the 4 hour, we can just see on the 4 hour we've got what I'm anticipating is going to happen. So on the 4 hour, we've just got this trend line that we was looking at before. Now we broke below the 4 hour 50 MA, but for me I think this is going to be a case we're going to probably fake out of it or break back through it, come up, test to 38.2, which it will be much clearer on the 1 hour while I'm thinking of that. But then obviously retrace to there and then come down potentially lower. So on the 1 hour, you can just see why. So I'm thinking we're going to have a retracement to the 38.2, touch the 1 hour 50 MA, and then move over to the downside. So that's my thoughts on gold. Next we've got oil. So of course oil is a bit of a tough one at the moment because we just don't know what Trump's going to say next, and obviously there are deals in place, but these could be already priced into the market. So if we just trade off the technicals, what we can see is that price is now making a major push to the downside, with obviously these sort of previous lows being matched. So if I just sort of go onto the weekly, we'll have a clearer picture. And what that is that we've now broken out of this sort of trend line, obviously a couple of weeks ago, and then we had this sort of small correction on the weekly, and now it comes straight back down for that liquidity that was provided by this hammer here. So now we sort of retrace that, we didn't break above, come back down, and now we are looking to push even lower. We've now broken below this liquidity here, so I think we will see further downside potential. On the daily, we can just see obviously prices impulsively come down, correctively retraced, and now we're seeing a big impulse to the downside. We've obviously got sort of that shooting star from this area here, and then you can see we've just continued to be bearish. But now we've made this new sort of low on the weekly. Good afternoon guys, and welcome back to another video with me, Connor. Today we'll be going through my weekly watch list as normal. I've just finished a community call with the RF community, going through all of my trades, for this week, or what's on my watch list, and also some trades from the previous week. If you would like to join them, they are live every Sunday at 2 p.m. Just get in touch with me via my Instagram, RogerFX, or sort of try and find me on one of my socials, or comment on the video down below and I'll be in touch. But let's go straight into the video today. So on the monthly we have this ascending trend line. Obviously same story as last week on most of these pairs, because we're in the middle of the month, coming up to sort of our third week. So obviously we've got sort of a week, we've got about 2 weeks left until the end of the month, or just under. So we've obviously got this monthly impulse to the upside, obviously making higher highs, higher lows. However, we've now made this lower high, obviously last month, so that's what we're kind of focusing on. And then so far at the moment, we're looking like an inverted hammer, which could potentially signal that we're going to get a lot more bearish potential. So on the weekly, we've got this trend line. We have now broken this trend line, of course, and then we've retraced. And now last week we ended up with bearish candle, kind of retracing the candlestick before. And then, of course, the week just gone, we've just had this spinning top, so potentially moving back to the upside, or we just sort of consolidate slightly before we come to the 50 EMA. But of course, we're below that 99.93 level, which is an important level here, as you can see, because it marks out this high, and it's our weekly level. So on the daily, you can just see a slightly different picture in terms of the fact we made this new low on the weekly. We can move our major low, so we had this last major low, which we used as a nice resistance. Then we had this previous major low here. We've now broken back through. We've broken through that, made this new current low. So I think we'll retest that and come back down. So on the 4 hour, I think we're just going to have a small retracement, come down to retest that previous major low at $19.20, and then come down to the downside. So bearish for oil, I think. And obviously last week I did say this was a possibility. We did have this trend line, and I was talking about that break or bounce, and I favoured the reversal to the downside, which we've now seen, and that 90% rule achieved and gone further. So now let's look at the watch list for this week. So first pair is Aussie dollar CAD. I've got quite a few pairs on my watch list this week. Of course, I'm not going to take every pair. I'm going to see what ones play out over the next few days, so Monday, Tuesday. And then, of course, I'll narrow this down to sort of the pairs that actually are coming into play. And of course, some of these might be a little bit longer term, but we'll go with it anyway. A lot of charts for you, a lot of content, and hopefully you guys will be able to catch some moves off of it. So after forming a new low, prices retraced massively, of course. We've seen that, and this could just be a retracement rather than an extension. So we obviously had the monthly finishes that spinning top. We've seen that retracing to the high of the candle, but we're just retracing, right? We haven't broken above it. Unless we break above that previous major high, I'm not too worried. So on the weekly, perfect sort of example of why it's okay if we break through a trend line, because as long as we don't break structure, don't break the previous lower higher, in this case we're fine. So it is at this 88%. So I normally use sort of 78.6 and below, but the 88% you can also use as well. It's one of our significant fibs. So with the weekly 50 made, the 88%, we've not managed to break above the lower high. So therefore, it's not breaking the trend, and therefore potentially we see a reverse from here. And with that inverted hammer on the weekly, it sort of is a big move potentially to the downside. On the daily, we've obviously had that retracement. We've obviously had a series of spinning tops, which is an indecision reversal. So potentially going to come down from here, and using that liquidity formed by this spinning top here. So potentially come down, and obviously we need to break through that daily 50 first. So 4 hour looks quite clean. Just obviously got this trend line here, looking for a break below, then slight retracement, and then look to go down. So of course we've kind of done that now that we've had the retracement, and look for that downside potential, which goes with some of the other CAD pairs we're looking at. So obviously we have got this sort of massive series of impulse, so we haven't really formed a high low. Of course, on the sort of lower time frames, you would have got lower highs, higher lows, sorry, but these are our major ones on the trend line. So then that's Aussie CAD. So looking for shorts on that one. Next pair we're going to look at is Aussie Yen. So last week we didn't look at any Aussie pairs. Now I'm looking at them again because we've seen a few fake outs of daily 50 EMAs, etc. So Australian dollar yen, this monthly trend line had a big bearish impulse, and then of course this retracement so far this month. This has given us this area of confluence and this probability. Of course, I personally use the monthly, weekly, and daily for the overall trend and the overall direction, then daily and the 4 hour for entry criteria or my area of confluence, and then to actually execute the trade and get the entry 4 hour, 1 hour, 15 minute. But that's personally how I work, and obviously how my strategy works. But of course, it's important to have adaptation to your strategy, and if you learn someone else's, you're never going to repeat the exact same results because you're a different person, different psychology. So obviously with the price here, we can see that we've now retraced and we filled that gap that was created, and now we're sitting at 61.8, which is really nicely. We've got this sort of impulse right up to the liquidity area. We haven't broken through that. And then we've rejected this 61.8. We then have spin and top. So I think this week we're going to have a big bearish week and possibly create a bearish engulfing, then have an even star. But I think definitely a bearish week on Aussie yen to come. And this daily is really, really simple. So we've got this previous swing high low here, and then this last major low here, which is at the start of the trend. So off of this, we can see that price is played out really nicely, just readjusting that trend line. But you can see break. So we look to fake out the daily, or we look to break the daily 50 MA. We actually faked out. We've got this big bearish engulfing through the trend line, through the daily 50, and now we've retraced. We've touched this 50 EMA, and now with it finished with an inverted hammer, and now look to move to the downside. So that's really, really nice, and definitely one to watch. We've also got this 61.8 here, which is kind of faint there, but 61.8% fib. So really nice retracement, really nice price action. Okay, so 4 hour. 4 hour, we've obviously got this trend line here, and you can just see here some sort of high lows made. And obviously now we've had that retrace 61.8. I want to see a break of the 4 hour and then potentially get into that trade. So I probably expect something like this to happen. Break back above, come back, make that new sort of lower high, and then potentially move to the downside, something like that. So that's Aussie CAD. So we're going to look at is CAD Swiss. So I've been looking at this one for weeks. Got stopped at a break even last week, but still valid analysis. So monthly, we've now filled that gap as we know, and obviously sitting at liquidity area. Weekly, quite messy. Obviously, we had all these tweezers bottoms and all these bullish wicks. How we've now filled that gap, filled this liquidity area. Got a spinning top on the weekly, indicating indecision. We haven't broke above that previous low, filled that gap, and now I think we'll roll over to the downside. On the daily, you can just see that flag pattern or rising wedge, should I say, that we had. I think we've now broke below that, retested it really nicely, spinning top close on Friday, and I think we will come lower now. We haven't really validated that previous low properly because it's a spinning top, signal for reversal or indecision. So I think this is quite nice, and that's sort of the risk reward I kind of look at in that trade. It's quite a nice 4.75 risk reward, and potentially further. So breaking through that previous all-time low and making a new all-time low, which obviously we have got this all-time low and all-time low there. On the 4 hour, you can just see a really nice break and retracement. So break of that rising wedge, break below the 4 hour 50 MA, retracement. We got an even style, which probably caught a lot of people out. That's where I sort of got hit a break even after placing a trade after that, and then we got this retest. And I thought we'd probably go down from here. We've seen price push back up. Friday close might have seen some strength in the CAD, and obviously we could see a move back below here. So 50% liquidity. 4 hour 50 MA is not too far. On CAD Swiss, still bearish. I think we just need to wait for that correct entry, which we could have coming this week. Next is Euro Aussie. So Euro Aussie, we can just see we've rejected that major higher, and we've had a big bearish month so far. Weekly, you can see that big bearish impulse that we've had coming down, and now we're coming close to that weekly 50 MA, or closer than what it was before. Still got about 500 pips before we get there. So on the daily, we just have this simple sort of break of trend line, RBO, made a new low, then corrected, only a small correction to 23.6, touched the 50 EMA, daily 50, which of course takes a lot to break through it, so we didn't expect too much of a retracement. It would have invalidated the trade, and then we had this shooting star off of that 23.6, off of that 50 EMA, and now expect price to push down and then meet this low, this previous low here, and then also this previous or start of the trend here for that 90% roll. So on the 4 hour, we can just see obviously slightly different in terms of that going from this highest correction here, this low 61.8 retracement, and then come down. I think we'll continue this downside momentum, breaking back below that 1.71292 level, which is this low here. So Euro Aussie shorts. Next page, Euro CAD. So similar to AUD CAD. Monthly, we've got this big rejection off this liquidity area and trend line, top of the wedge. Obviously, very bullish candle, but we're starting to reject it. Is this a retracement or is this a extension? On the weekly, you can just see here prices sort of coming down, slowing down, and obviously if the price of oil is getting weaker, oil's getting weaker, that means CAD's getting weaker, and therefore Euro CAD should shoot up. So that could be why we're seeing this sort of spinning top forms in this area of liquidity, and we could obviously roll over to the upside from here. We have got this 50% here, which is interesting. So we could obviously push up from here. We haven't, obviously we have made sort of a new low here, which is obviously our only concern that we've broken structure. On the daily, you can see that we've obviously got 50%, retraced quite nicely that, and now we look for that extension down past that daily 50 MA. So kind of short term maybe shorts, but long term maybe longs in a sense. Then obviously we had that head and shoulders, which is still carrying some weight. We haven't really fulfilled that, so potentially won't completely fill it, but we probably will fulfill most of it. 4 hour, you can just see we've got this inner and outer structure. So we have this outer structure which we broke, then retraced. Now we've got this inner structure which we broke, and just sitting on that start of the 90% trend. So what I mean by that is this is the start of this inner trend. We've started that, so it's no surprise to get retracement from here. Retraced the high low, rejected that as resistance, and now come back below the 4-hour 50 MA, and now looking to push down even further. So then next pair we're going to look at is Euro JPY. Monthly impulse to the upside, then we had this sort of impulse to the downside and kind of formed this wedge. We've now broken below that wedge, corrected to 38.2, and so under that kind of crossed over, crossed over actually, so it worked out really nicely, and now we're looking to push lower. So on the weekly, just see on the weekly, yeah, so on the weekly you can just see obviously that break of the trend line, then we've retraced to 71%, and then we've now looked to push down and impulsively move to the downside from here. So big potential to keep carrying on. I actually caught this trade this week, so I caught it from the, I think it was kind of around here, because what I'm looking at was sort of in my area last week, so looking for that. So I think I've got in either, I got in here and then scaled in here. So really nice trade, getting to that extension nearly. So obviously that 90% rule starting here, and then of course potentially extension to go lower. But really simple case of impulse, correction 50%, liquidity and 50 EMA, and then we've seen a massive drop to the downside. 4 hour, we've now broken this inner sort of wedge, and then we've made this sort of tracement to the 61.8, and then we've seen this big move to the downside, so could have potentially scaled in there, for example. And then of course we now look to continue that momentum to this previous high low and start of the trend to the 90% rule. Next one is Euro USD. So Euro USD, I haven't traded in a while. For me, it's not clean at the moment. I'd rather look for say GBP USD or NZD USD. But of course, this hammer and the spinning top is still providing us with a lot of sort of bullish rejection. And we have now seen the price retrace to the bottom of that wick. We're looking to push up on the weekly. We've now seen big impulse. So upside, big impulse, downside, then correction, correct off the weekly 50 MA, and then push down to go further. So price after the retracement did test the weekly support, but it's now pushed down since that point. On the daily, you can see this sort of triangle it's formed, so making sort of higher lows but lower highs. Then we've retraced to 50% and daily 50, retraced from here, broke below the bottom of the wedge, so the descending trend line, broke below that, retested really nicely, and now looking to push into this liquidity area at the minus 27%. So that could be quite a nice trade there potentially. 4 hour. On the 4 hour, you can just see we've broken this sort of trend line here. So a lot of people probably would have got caught out at this 4 hour trend line break here. And for me, it was just a case of a fake out. So we got a 50% fake out. And then I was looking for price to sort of fake out from here, move to the downside, which it is doing so far. So now what I'm looking for is a break of the 4 hour, which we had, retest that successfully. Now we're breaking down, break below this ascending sort of trend line, retested that nicely, and now I expect further downside potential. So that's Euro USD. Now we've got Pound Aussie, one that I looked at last week, the wedge. Now really bearishly working off of this and liquidity. On the weekly, you can just see that sort of big bearish engulfing that we've had. Then we've retraced to 38.2 really nicely. So that's just looking at this simple case of one candlestick and how we can use Fibonacci's off of one candlestick, because in the lower time frames it's a load of candlesticks in a collection. So on the daily, you can just see we've now broken that inner structure. We've got that sort of retracement to the 50 MA, and then into a short start, and now continuing that downside potential. We also have this outer structure, which we obviously is our next target to break, which on the 4 hour you can see this is the trend line from before, which we broke, and then we've now broke that inner structure of the daily, and then 71% reversal, perfect, and then we've moved to the downside. I'm looking for this to continue to that last major low or potentially lower, and obviously see how it reacts to that level. So that's GBP AUD. Next we've got Pound CAD, one of my favourites for the week, even though I don't normally trade it. So the monthly doesn't really tell us too much, but on the weekly, so over on the monthly, we have sort of made this new high here. However, kind of stays within this trend, but kind of invalidates this one. But now we've broken back into the trend, and we're sort of just staying bearish, and my overall pound bias is bearish. But on the weekly, you can just see this trend line here. We haven't broken that lower high here in that sense, but we are sort of really bearish here, then correction here, and now I think we'll roll over to the downside. So 78.6 reversal. We are above the weekly 50, so that is a concern. But on the daily, looks quite clean. It's daily trend line, liquidity area here. We broke below, then we retraced it. I think it was a 78.6 on that sort of initial break. But then even on this smaller structure where we've got obviously this again impulse. Then we've got this new low made, retraced 78.6, perfect rejection. If I just move that slightly up a bit, then you can see we've reversed from there really nicely with a shooting star close on Friday. So looking for that to continue and possibly gaps on this pair. 4 hour, I can just see this wedge that we've now rejected the top of it. Of course, we are above 4 hour 50 MA, but once we break through it, retrace, and then I think we'll see the downside potential from there. So 4 hour looks really nice. If we can break through that 4 hour 50 MA, and you can see the higher lows right at the bottom. So really big downside potential from here. Next pair we've got is GBP-JPY, so not a pair I normally trade. So this trend line, obviously it's a long-term trend line. We kind of faked out here in my opinion, but trend lines are subjective. Then of course we've got this even start off of this 50 EMA. You've got this 50 EMA rejection coming down, tracing this wick, and you can see we're now pushing back to the downside. So on the weekly, we can just see that price has got this weekly trend line. We've now seen price retrace after breaking impulsively through the weekly 50 MA. We've now seen price retrace to the 71.6, 71 and the 78.6, that golden pocket region, and then we're looking for that rollover to the downside, testing that previous high low, and then the start of the trend here. Of course, we kind of did already complete this, but now we're looking for that second retracement and that second extension. So on the daily, you can see this is a case where we haven't really invalidated the trend. So in this lower high we haven't, and this one we kind of have, but we're not really making any sort of moves to the upside. We're just sitting below at daily 50. So for me, more fake up. So daily 50 MA, price stalling at its level. And of course, if we go look at our fib, so from just see sort of that 88%. In line with that sort of daily 50 MA, which potentially gives us that move to roll over to the downside. So looking for break back below that next little high, retrace into the downside. So in the 4 hour, you can just see we have sort of got this sort of wedge forming, so we could break out either side. But I anticipate now we're starting to come below it. I think we're going to follow the trend from before, and then come down. So that's GBP-JPY. So looking for sort of shorts off there, mainly off that daily picture. Then we've got GBP-USD, which I've been looking at for weeks, but I finally think we're ready. After a few fake outs and after a few sort of false entries, I think we're finally going to get there. So monthly, even start that monthly 50 MA, still carrying this weight. Then we saw this massive move to downside, creating this new all-time low. Now we've had this retracement. Weekly, doesn't get much simpler. So impulse to downside, correction, 61.8. Finish the week with an inverted hammer, pushing all the buyers finally coming out and the sellers starting to come into the market. Daily, we've got this trend line here, which we've had for a while. We've got this sort of rising wedge. We faked out the daily 50 MA, which then put me off the trade. But now we have now completed the fake out back into trend. We've now sort of tested this high, and I think we'll now see this move to the downside. I think we're just sort of faking out there, so essentially move to the downside. So now looking at our 4 hour where we're going to enter. So on the 4 hour, you can just see this trend line here. We obviously broke through the trend line, made this low, we'll trace it at 38.2, and we're just sitting on this liquidity area now. So as long as we continue below the 1.25 key sort of support and resistance, and just stay below this liquidity and the 38.2, which is sort of here, you just can't see it very well, just here. And 38.2, we will be fine, and I think we'll see a massive relative downside. And looking at daily picture, massive potential trade. And the 1 hour, we're just sort of stalling at the moment on that 1 hour 50 MA, but I think we will break through. So next pair we're going to look at is NZD-USD. So similar to the GBP-USD setup. So on the monthly, we just broke that trend line, retraced and extended to the downside, retracing that monthly candlestick. Weekly, perfect impulse correction, 50% retracement, spinning top formed, and now I think we'll see that roll over to the downside. On the daily, you can just see perfect case of daily trend line broken below the higher low, retraced to the 61.8, and now looking for a move to the downside. So potentially go from here and then roll over, break below that previous high low again, test that, retest that, and then break below, stay around the higher low, then retest that, and then come down to the start of the trend. So 4 hour is just really simple, just sort of break that trend line. Obviously made that new low, and let's come up, retrace. We are above that 4 hour 50 MA, so I would like to see that broken back through, and then maybe break below the high low, previous high low as well if you want that extra confirmation, and then get into the short because it's a long-term trade potentially. Next one is USD CAD. So once again, one we've been looking at for a few weeks. So with sort of the oil news, this will affect it. So we'll just adjust that trend line. You can just see we've got this sort of supply zone here. So with this supply zone, what I mean by this is where we're looking to sort of sell at them higher prices. So we rejected this level. We've made this spinning top so far. On the weekly, you can see we're just sitting in between. If I show you that one. So we just have this sort of key level here. We're just sort of sitting on it at the moment, but we could potentially be reversing, like I said, on EuroCAD. But of course, this big bearish pressure, we retraced the whole of this candlestick, and then now look to be potentially pushing all the way back down. So okay, so on the daily, what we have here is obviously this trend line's been broken, retraced at 71%, 61.8%. We've now formed sort of nearly an even star, but of course the bearish engulfing isn't as big as the bullish. However, overall the Friday close was a shooting star after that spinning top, which is anticipated on this fib. Of course, with oil sort of getting weaker, you'd expect USD CAD to sort of continue the impulse the upside, but we could just see this come down, come to the 50 MA, and then move back to the upside. But of course, with the DXY becoming weaker, we are seeing some dollar weakness as well. So the daily looks quite nice for the short on USD CAD currently, and of course we have to trade what we see. So on this one, we can just see when we broke out of that wedge, we've got this sort of high low here. We've now broken below that, and then of course we've got this 90% here. So now we're just looking for that sort of reversal, which we are starting to do. We've now broke below the 4 hour 50 MA and then break down to minus 27%. Then the last pair we're going to look at is USD/JPY, which of course on all time frames we are bearish because of that 50 MA we spoke about last week. So on the monthly, kind of forming that pitchfork in a sense, which isn't a formation, it just looks like a pitchfork. But point is big three big rejections. Then we're closing that monthly spinning top, showing that indecision. Then on the weekly, we've got this bearish impulse, bullish correction, and then bearish again. And then we've now broke below that weekly 50. We've got that greystone doji, which as I said last week, probably expect some sort of evening star here, which we've now had. Bearish engulfing bigger than the bullish engulfing. So big rejections at that weekly 50 MA. On the daily, we've got these two fibs. So the initial one is just simply from this high to the low, and an 88% reversal on here with that stretched evening star, which I spoke about last week. And now you're sort of seeing us make a head and shoulders potentially on the daily. And then the second fib is just this high to this low, and then we're just looking for, if I just adjust this, we can just see we sort of had that rejection there, and then potentially moving down on that smaller structure and move down from here. On the 4 hour, you can just see this descending trend line that we've got here, and looking for prices to break below because we have found support at this level, and we do have some liquidity here. So you can just see this liquidity here that price is sort of providing, but I expect this to continue. But however, with the DXY potentially looking to go bullish, we could just simply see a break, tracement, and then move to the upside on there. So that is my thoughts on USD/JPY. So the short does look nice, but if we're obviously looking at GBP USD short and things like that, then it doesn't correlate well with USD/JPY. So I hope you enjoyed the video. That is all the analysis this week. Any questions, please message me. Check out my Instagram for updates, and hopefully you will catch some pips this week. So have a good week, everyone, and stay safe, and I'll see you guys later.